Today I wanted to talk about why I don't outline. Caveat. So disclaimer before we start, this is not advice. The only piece of advice that's going to come out of my mouth this whole video is something along the lines of, and this may come out at several different points, but it's something along the lines of you have to find the writing method that works for you, and the writing method that works for you is the one that gets you from book concept to book completion. And it might take a while to figure it out, and you might have to go through several iterations of ideas, and you might have to go through several iterations of attempts to write a book, and you will definitely have to go through several drafts. But this whole video is just me sharing my process of how I found out that outlining doesn't work for me, and in what ways that is true, you know? So I tried a lot of outlining methods. I have tried the snowflake method. I have tried the hero's journey method, which as far as I can tell is basically just the snowflake method, question mark. I have tried the 3-act structure as a outlining method. I have tried Freytag's pyramid as an outlining method. I have tried various kinds of beat sheets. I've tried the detailed 3-act. I don't know what it's actually called. I found a graphic of it on Pinterest a while ago, and I tried to fit to it, but it didn't have any link backs because Pinterest. So I can't tell you the official title, and I can't credit it to anyone. I've tried 3 different ways of using flashcards to outline. I have tried character motivation based outlining. I have tried character arc based outlining. And not a one has ever led to a book. Not a one. And I have a book. I have a book out. This book. Mary Arlan Breaking the Curse. I published it. It's out there. So why hasn't outlining worked for me? Well, I just don't know what's going to happen next. Like, yeah, I tried to outline a little. So there's a thing you can do. If you don't know the end of your story but you want to build an outline, that's totally fair, absolutely your decision. There's a thing you can do where you write a scene and then you write like the next little bit of outline. So you can write like what's going to happen in the next scene or the next 3 or 4 scenes, or go until you run out of steam and then go back and write those scenes in, and then each time you add a new scene you can see if you can update your outline a little and see where it's going and all that kind of stuff, which is really great if it works for you. However, for me, that resulted in a lot of like actually just writing the next scene, which, you know, is great unless you have places to be, and that's why you're not writing anymore. And also isn't so great if you forget to go back and check your outline and you just write the next scene when you go back to your draft and like read what you had the previous day, which is usually what works for me. If I read what I've just left behind, I can usually come up with the next scene based almost entirely on that. Like, I don't even have to read the whole thing. I can read the last like 100 to 200 words and I'm like good to go for the next scene. I can figure out it because it sticks in my brain. Stories, my brain is made for stories. Often the things I outline just don't come to fruition. I write something about how I expect the ending of the book to look, and then by the time I get there, that initial idea doesn't work anymore. And this is one of the really frustrating things about writing out of order, is that sometimes I'll do that. I'll write the scene for the end of the book, and then by the time I get there, with all the character development that's happened in the rest of the book, it doesn't work anymore, and I'm like, rats. I guess we'll be putting that in a trash folder then, to be salvaged for some other treasure. But yeah, if I make an outline, a lot of the time I get 3 scenes into it and it has to change. And yeah, again, you can go through and repeatedly update your outline as things do change. But when things are changing every single writing session, updating your outline becomes more of a frustration than something that's actually beneficial. I've never been very good with maps. I go and follow a map to a place, but also I'm quite bad at following maps to places because I get distracted and I go on tangents, which is pretty indicative of how I write books actually. I get bored. I write an outline and my brain interprets it as me having actually written the book without actually having written the book, and then my brain gets annoyed at me when I try to write it instead of trying to edit what I already have. And I don't know if this is just because, like, when I was a teenager and writing, I would just scribble down and get lost in it and never finish a story. Or like, if it's that I I just have a brain that works like that. But yeah, I get bored because my brain interprets me writing an outline as me having already written the story. And if I've already written the story, why am I trying to write the story again without being able to base it on bits of story that I've already written, but all I have is an outline, you know? I also get bored because the outlining process just doesn't hold my interest, and then I lose passion for the project and the project kind of dies. It's one of those things, actually, one of the pieces of advice that I got quite early on in my trying to become a professional writer career thing, was that if you get an idea, a shiny new idea, a good way to avoid following it completely down the rabbit hole without feeling like you're missing out or feeling like you're losing it, is to just outline for that project and then put the outline aside and come back to it later. And I did that exactly once. Never written that project, have I? Probably not gonna. Have no interest in writing anything like that anymore. Filled with regret. No, not actually filled with regret. I have hundreds of thousands of ideas. It's okay to lose a few. Like, you always lose a few in the shuffle. And like, sometimes you'll have an idea and you'll think it's great and you'll start writing it down and then you'll be there like, oh no, this isn't a book. But I do post most of those to my short story blog, nopoodles.wordpress.com. If you are interested, I post and upload every single Thursday. I get distracted. So I start outlining, I write down a detailed bit of a scene, which is, I hear, pretty normal to do in the outlining process. If you have specific ideas for like pieces of dialogue or bits of the description or anything, a lot of people will put those in their big version of their outline. Some people do like big outlines and little outlines. I don't really understand it, but you know, do what works for you. And I hear that that's pretty common, to write down like the specifics of a specific scene that's really vivid in your brain and write it down in your outlining process. You can fit it in later. But then I start doing that and I just go off. I just keep writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And next thing I know, I'm just scribbling down the whole novel and the outline is out the window because I'm just writing. I've run out of time to be able to do the rest of the outline in my like designated writing time. I've run out of time to do the outline in my like designated writing time, and so I therefore end up without an outline and having written however much words I can get into that time frame. I don't know my characters or my character arcs until I write them. I have a very static picture of what my characters look like at the very beginning of their specific story. But I don't really know how they're going to develop and change until they actively start being put in situations and I have to figure out how they're going to develop and change. Which I like to phrase as until they actually start developing and changing, but I know that that upsets a lot of people. There's one specific author tuber who really, really hates it. I've been following for a while. I'm not going to name names because I don't want people to get weird about it. But who finds it really weird when writers say things like, oh, my character just wouldn't do the thing. And I find that so fascinating because it's just shorthand. It's just a colloquialism for like, it's not, like, I don't believe that my characters are actively independent of my planning. But when I say something like, my characters don't want to do that, or that doesn't make, like, it doesn't make sense for my character anymore, what I mean is that the way the story has unfolded through me telling the story, and the way that the character has developed through me telling the story, means that my character doesn't want to do that anymore, is shorthand for they've developed in a different direction than what I thought they were going to. My plan was to send them to the zoo, but as it turns out, from one brief conversation that I didn't plan for them to have, they think keeping animals in cages is wrong, so we're not going to the zoo anymore. My character doesn't want to, and it's not actually that my character doesn't want to, it's that I, the author, have figured out, actually, with the character arc that they're on, it's not going to work. And I know that some hardcore outliners will be absolutely horrified to hear that I don't know what my character arcs are going to be before I start writing them. And I'm sorry to you, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know my characters. I have these brief snapshots of what they're like in the beginning, and until I actually put them into situations and kind of intuitively figure out, is that the word, intuitive? intuitively figure out what they're going to do in that situation. I don't know what they're going to do. You could, like, again, this is a published book. I know all of the characters in this, inside out. I'm writing the second book. And, like, I know these characters so well. But if you asked me, what would Mary do if taken to a zoo? I don't know. I don't know until I'm actually writing her in that position. I wouldn't be able to just tell you. I'd have to actually, like, mentally take her there to figure it out. And finally, the ultimate overarching deity-tiered thing, reason, the ultimate reason that informs all of these sub-reasons that I've just gone through in painstaking detail. I'm a very instinctive writer. I like exploring possibilities, and I personally have no issue editing stuff out that doesn't work. I have no issue finding issues in my drafts and going, okay, well, I'm gonna have to write myself out of this corner, or okay, where does this problem start and how far back do I have to go? So in 2019 in 2019 for Camp NaNoWriMo in April, I started what is currently entitled my pirate project. Well, I do have a proper title for it, but it's currently entitled, for public consumption, my pirate project. And I absolutely adore my pirate project. It is one of my favourite projects that I've ever written. Sorry, Mary. However, I got 50,000 words in, not during NaNoWriMo, I'm not that person. I got 50,000 words into the draft of it, and I realised when I got to, like, the climax of the novel that it didn't work, that this was a big issue, that these characters wouldn't make this choice, that this didn't make sense, and there was nowhere to go from there. So I tracked back in the draft I had, like, okay, where did the setup for this begin? And the answer was in chapter 3. Ouch. But you know what I did? I went back and I rewrote, and then I ended up with the same problem. So we put it on the back burner, it's percolating now. And I'm excited to go back to it. I know I can write this story. I just have to figure out how to do the ending properly. And I've got more and better ideas for it, and I've done all of the stuff that I need to do, like figuring out how the characters got to the point they're at the beginning of the novel, and basically writing a prequel novel. It's all good. And I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I don't have any issues finding this kind of problem, because again, it's so much fun to just explore these worlds, and it means I get to spend more time there. Like, it's not great for a publishing schedule, because if you end up, like, if I end up coming face to face with this issue in, for example, the second Mary Arlan book, it's gonna be a big problem, because it's gonna mean that everything takes that much longer to get out, and that's, like, as a reader, I would find that quite disappointing, and I don't want to disappoint people like that. I'd love to be able to release these books relatively quickly. But I also know that ultimately I don't want to release a book that I don't think is up to snuff. It's not up to quality, so it's going to take how long it's going to take, and I'm just going to have to live with that, as is everyone else. I cannot terminologically, that's not a real word, tell you how story structure works, but like, with certain grammar rules, like passive voice, I have this just feeling about it, this strong feeling about it. What I mean by, like, passive voice is, if you watch my Deciphering Writing Advice about the passive voice, I say in it that whenever I find the passive voice, I just go bleh, and like, and so far that feeling hasn't led me astray on grammar rules, it hasn't led me astray on story structure, it hasn't led me astray on the things that the feeling is strong about. And like, My wife really likes the 3-act structure to assess stories, and apparently, according to her, Mary Ellen Breaking the Curse fits perfectly into thirds, which is basically says it fits perfectly into the 3-act structure, which, you know, I didn't do intentionally. Like, I didn't do consciously. I just followed the feeling. Like, literally. It is, what is it? It's 36, 38 chapters. 38 chapters. 38 divided by, oh, would have been so. Yep. Chapter 11. One big thing changes. And you go through the door, as people say. And then, oh yeah, chapter 22 as well. Well, chapter 11 and then chapter 23. It is perfectly arranged into 3 acts, and I'm just like, the feeling. And then, I don't know how to phrase this. I guess I've sort of covered it, but I just write what I feel like writing, and then I edit it into a better version, and then I edit that into a better version, and I really have these like huge concepts that get, with each edit, they get narrowed down into this very linear storyline. And it's okay if in a draft I've got some really wacky and wild thing that ends up not being involved. Like, in the second Mary Arlan book, the first thing I wrote in this notebook, which is when I decided I was officially allowed to start, oh gosh, my cat's just chewed through a bunch of the pages. And then I decided I was officially going to start writing the second Mary Arlan book, which is while I was going through the publishing process for the first Mary Arlan book. The first scene I wrote, which was on the 4th of April. 4th of April, really. Yeah. Has been completely cut from the novel already, and I'm only in draft 3. Like... And I'm not fussed about that. It was a nice little scene, I liked it, but it doesn't fit with where the characters are going. So I've kept what's important in it and dumped the rest. Changed the setting, changed who's involved, made it at a different point in the story, and utilised the bits that are useful and basically trashed the rest. But it's still in my notebook, so I still know it exists. It's actually the first time in my life that the thing I wrote first wasn't the first scene. That never happens. I always write my first scenes first. It was completely wild. I do really love my first scene. It's in the back of the first Mary Arlan book, the first scene from... God, I'm being really cagey about this title. It's in the back of the fucking book. But yeah, like, it's... The first scene, ostensibly, there's going to be changes to it, obviously, but it's in the back of the first book already, because I had it. So I just follow my instincts and let it happen how it happens, and 9 times out of 10 it leads to the right conclusion, and that 1 time out of 10, like my pirate project, it just needs a bit more time and a bit more editing and a bit more instinct. How do I know, considering the fact that I've only got 1 book out so far, that this is definitely going to work for me again? Well, the thing is I'm not against the idea of retrying to outline for a future project if that is something that sort of takes my fancy, or if I start really struggling with blasting out a first draft. I'm not saying that I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to try outlining again. If somebody comes to me and says, I've got this really cool outlining method, I'm happy to give it a shot. Like, I'm willing to give anything a try. This is a book that you can buy in most places. Links to where to find it and me all over the internet are in the description box below, right next to the like and subscribe buttons if you feel like sticking around. Everybody is welcome. Pantsers, non-pantsers, people who pants parts and outline parts. You're all welcome here. And hopefully I will be able to return to my office soon. But right now I tried filming this video with Porthos in the kitchen, but he did not appreciate the amount of noise I was making, so he screamed. So we're working on it. He's asleep now, of course.